Hopefully this
I could have
works.
pressed it.
Okay.
Get up there.
Okay, so last topic on evolutionary relationships. We have. Why are you not doing anything?
You would pause it? Okay.
Oh, it's frozen. That's why.
Clear fish.
I clicked a bunch of times. Okay, so this is basically evidence of evolution. Okay, why we believe that natural selection is the process by which evolution occurs. Just some evidence that we've discovered over time to enhance that. So first one is comparative anatomy, which is basically studying the structure of living things and looking for similarities on how related things are set up as far as their body structure. So a homology is any similarity that indicates a common origin or a shared ancestry. One of the ones that's very obvious is bone structure. So if you look at the bones in the arm that we have, okay, here's our arm. We have one bone at the top called the humerus. We have the radius and the ulna in our forearm. We have carpals, which are our wrist bones, metacarpals in our hand, and then phalanges are our fingers. So if you look at the limbs of any mammal, you're going to see that same arrangement of bones. This is a cat. Okay, a cat has very similar arrangement. Okay, here's a whale. Now, most people, a lot of people don't know that whales even have bones in their flippers, but they do. So this would be like a dolphin or a whale. And you can see they have the same bones, same arrangement. They got really, really long fingers. Okay, but they got the same arrangement. Huh?
That would be creepy.
That would be very creepy. That'd be like Edward Scissorhands. All right. Here's a bat. Bat is also a mammal. But you can see they have the same arrangement. They also have very long metacarpals and very long fingers as well. So all of these are all mammals, okay? And they all have a similar arrangement of bones. And we know that all mammals are related. Mammals have the same characteristics. They have hair or fur. They give milk to their young. And they have this similar bone structure. Okay, so that indicates a relationship between all mammals. Those would be called homologous structures. Homo means same. Okay, so these are homologous. Okay. Now they may function differently. A bat's going to use its wings differently than a human uses its arms, but same inside structure. So any questions on that? All right. So homologous structures give evidence of what we call divergent evolution, which is having a common ancestor that we have diverged from and acquired different traits. So good example of that. Here are Darwin's finches. We've talked about them multiple times. Okay, we said they had a common ancestor in South America. They went to different islands. They diverged. They now have different characteristics, but they're still very closely related, and you can tell that by their similar structures. Don't have much to write, so I'm going to move on. All right, you can also see this evidence in vestigial organs. These are structures that have no useful purpose. For example, the wings of an ostrich. But we talked about, I think, Friday, our appendix. Okay, that's our vestigial structure. We said our appendix is probably left over from when our ancestors used to eat raw meat. So that's ours. This is a fish. This is a cave fish, so it lives in a cave, so it doesn't need eyes, so it's gotten rid of its eyes. This one everybody's usually surprised by. So here's a whale. Okay, now a whale does not have back legs, but its ancestors had back legs. So a whale actually has a pelvis and then also a femur. Okay, a femur is this bone right here. Okay, so you would be like, why does a whale have a femur? It doesn't have back legs. It's just a remnant from its ancestors, which is going to show relationships. All mammals have the same femur, so it's related to us because we have a femur as well. So questions on vestigial organs? All right, moving on. All right, now, here's where people get confused. We just showed you homologous structures. These are analogous structures, and everybody gets these backwards. Okay, analogous structures are going to be features that have similar functions, but the structure is different. Okay? So for homologous, it was same structure, different function. Now we have same function, different structure. So we have a bird. No, that's a butterfly, not a bird. We have a butterfly wings, and we have bat wings. Okay? Those have the same function. They are used to fly. Similar functions. However, the structure, if you've ever looked closely at a butterfly wing, they don't have bones. You know, they don't have the same bone structure like bats do. So they have a different structure, same function, but the reason they have that function is because they've adapted to fly. Okay, so these two are not closely related. Things that have analogous structures are not going to be as closely related as things that have homologous structures. Okay? Does that make sense to everyone? For now, anyway, yes. Okay. Okay. All right, so the things that have analogous structures are going to show convergent evolution. Okay? Meaning they don't necessarily have a common ancestor, but they are similar because of how they have adapted to live. So if you look here, we have a shark, which is a fish. We have an ichthyosaur, which is an extinct reptile that you've never seen in real life before because they no longer exist. And then we have a dolphin, which everybody's seen in real life. Okay, dolphin's a mammal. So what do we notice about these three creatures?
They all have similar bodily structures, but due to their genetic makeup, they have various alterations of their physical appearance.
Correct. Okay, so why do they have a similar body structure? No, they don't have
They
a
could be
common-
related.
But they're not related.
It's obvious.
Where they live, yes. Okay, so they're not closely related because one's a fish, one's a reptile, one's a mammal. But, as he said, where they live. Okay, they're adapted to live in the water. So they're going to have a torpedo-shaped body. They're going to have similar coloration for camouflage. Okay, but what's going to be a big difference between them? What's the difference between a shark and a dolphin?
Inside stuff.
Its
The what?
size and the shape of its front of its head.
Sort of, yes.
Like, dolphins have that blowhole and sharks don't.
How they breathe, yes. So dolphins have a blowhole. How do sharks breathe?
Through their mouth.
Gills. Gills.
And
Well,
they
through,
can
yeah,
see
through their
where
mouth
the-
into their gills. All right, so
breathe.
I don't really know how an ichthyosaur breathed.
It probably went up to the surface.
I would guess
And
because
just-
it's a reptile. Yeah, reptiles don't tend to have gills. So yes, we're going to say that this probably breathed more similar to the dolphin. And that makes sense because a reptile and a mammal are more closely related than a reptile and a fish. Because you got amphibians in between here. Okay, so does everybody understand? These are not as closely related, but they just look similar because they converged. They converged in where they live, so that's why they look similar. Okay. All right, so here's just a little comparison again. Remember, homologous indicates common ancestry. They have the same structure, may have a slightly different function. Analogous structures indicate that they have a similar function, but not necessarily as closely related as the ones that have homologous structures. All right, another way that you can tell when things are related is by looking at embryos. Embryos are the stage of development before the fetus, so basically egg, embryo, fetus.
So we were all embryos?
You all were an embryo at some point, yes. Okay, so if you look at embryos of different vertebrates, okay, they all start out the same. Okay, here's what embryos all start out looking like, and these are, we got a fish, amphibian, a reptile, a bird, 2 mammals. We got a rabbit and a human. So, like if you looked at us at this stage, okay, you couldn't tell what kind of animal that was going to become. Okay, over time, you know, these two kind of look a lot more different, and that's why I said a fish and a reptile aren't as close as a reptile and a mammal. And then you can, I mean, but look at, we're very similar here, you know, and you can see how, you can definitely see how reptiles and birds are related. Okay. But these all indicate the fact that we're all the same starting out, that indicates a common ancestor.
We were all skinny at one point.
We were all skinny at one point. So, questions on that? They love to have this picture on the state test. They're going to say, what does this indicate? And the answer is going to be common ancestor. Okay, and that's just a word of advice. Anytime the answer says something about a common ancestor, that's probably going to be the choice, because they really want you to know and understand common ancestor. Okay, we're going to come back to that, because I don't even have the question sheet. All right, we're going to look at the fossil record. Okay, another thing that we can look at for evidence of evolution is fossils. Okay, scientists estimate there are between 5 and 100 million species on the Earth. Okay, so why is that number so different? Like, why do we not have a better estimate of how many species we have? Yes?
Because a good portion of the Earth is unexplored, mainly the oceans. We know more about space than we do the oceans.
That is correct.
And
Yes.
plus of the like death rate, you know, maybe something that has to do with that.
Possibly, like ones that are going extinct that we don't even know about. We
Right,
not
or
even-
endangered.
Right. So yes, so we have between 5 and 100 million currently living species, but only about 2 million have been identified and named. A lot of those are, like they talked about in the Cosmos video, they've identified like 500,000 beetles, but not a whole lot of other things. So they also estimate as many as 99% of species to ever live on the Earth have gone extinct, which we're going to see in the Cosmos video. They're going to talk about all the different extinctions and what happened in those. So what we know about the things that are no longer here are going to come from the fossil record. So fossil is the preserved remains of an organism, or it could be evidence of an organism, or just part of their body, so a bone or a leaf. It could be poop. Okay, we've learned a lot from dinosaur poop. Footprints as well. Okay, and here's all the different time periods. We're not going to memorize all of those. If you take like a geology class at some point, you'll memorize those.
Do you teach zoology?
No, I teach human anatomy and physiology is my only other class right now. She teaches zoology next door. So fossils are going to show a change in species over time. So we can look at fossils from different periods of time, even fossils of the same type of organism, and see how they've changed. Like we talked about giraffes. Giraffes have gotten a lot taller over time, so their bones will indicate that. You can also see in those layers of fossils, let me flip back real fast. Okay, you can look at the different layers, okay, and you can see what's present and what's absent in each layer to see when something went extinct, when something new appeared. And also we've talked about it shows an increase in complexity over time. So simpler things are going to be earlier in the fossil record, more complex things are going to be later in the fossil record. If you're really into fossils and you want to study them, you can become a paleontologist, which is somebody that studies fossils and goes out and digs them up, and it looks like an adventure.
I cannot stand this.
I thought that was archaeologists.
Archaeologists they study old civilizations, but not necessarily fossils. They're looking for like pots and arrowheads and that kind of stuff. Yeah. All right, questions? And there's not a whole lot to write on these, so I'm going kind of fast. All right, geologists are people that study earth and rock, so a lot of times they're going to work together with the paleontologist. The geologist knows about the type of rock that's in the layer, how it's laid down, possibly the age of the rocks in the layer, and then they can tell the paleontologist, you know, if your fossil is in this layer, it's this old, and they can combine in that way. So the way this is done is you're looking at layers of rock. These are called strata. And fossils are going to be found in sedimentary rock. Anybody remember what sedimentary rock is? How does that form? Yes. Yes.
It's the material being piled onto it.
Correct.
In portions at a time.
Right. So well, it's on the picture, but where's the oldest layer of sedimentary rock?
The very
Bottom. Right. So this is going to be the oldest stuff, and then the rock layers are going to pile on top of it. If there's anything that's going through the rock, like maybe this was a volcanic eruption and some magma, lava, whatever it's called, went through the rock, That has to be the youngest thing because how would it go through the rock layers if they weren't there? So, you know, geologists learn to look for patterns and how things form. So relative dating sounds like something that would happen in Mississippi, but relative dating means how old is something in relation to other things. So if something is in this layer, it has to be younger than if it's in this layer or this layer. Okay? So in relation to things, how old are you? So you're not trying to get an exact age with relative dating. You're just saying it's older or younger based on the layers.
You just went off, Miss.
I know. So, one trick that scientists can use to figure out the age of a layer is the presence of an index fossil. Anybody know what this fossil is called?
A shell.
Yes?
Mollusk?
It is a mollusk. It's a type of mollusk. It is a shell. Anybody know it starts with a what?
A.
It does start with an A.
Is like ammonite?
Ammonite, yes, very good. So this is an ammonite. People wear these as like jewelry. You can cut it open and it's really pretty.
Oh, I know those. It's the one that you get like.
Yeah, I remember now.
Yeah, you can get them. So ammonite is an index fossil because ammonite only lived in a very short, brief time period. There seem to be a lot of them though, so they evidently had plenty. But so if ammonite is present in a rock layer, you know it had to be at that certain time period. And then if something is next to the ammonite, you know that that lived at the same time period, so that's helpful in dating other things as well. Yes?
Could something potentially be shifted up a layer by like natural occurrences, like an earthquake or something?
Yes, it could. That happens all the time. But if you're a geologist, you know how to notice that and what it's going to look like, and you'll know that it's been shifted.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty obvious. All right, any other questions? Okay. All right, if you want to get the actual age of something, you would do what is called radiometric dating. This is where they use isotopes, radioactive isotopes. Normally carbon-14 is the isotope that they use, and it's based on the half-life. Does anybody know what a half-life is other than a video game?
I know it. It's not coming to my
Not
head.
coming.
Is it like one?
It's a half, yes. Half of what? Yes.
It's the portion of time how long a radioactive substance takes to break down.
Correct. Or decay, yes. So half-life is, so you have a radioactive substance like carbon-14, and we know how long it takes to break down. A half-life is when half of it is broken down. Okay, so they base their timing off of half-life. So you can have one half-life, and then within that you have another half-life, and you just have to do some math calculations and figure out, if this much carbon-14 is still in this rock, then how old should this rock be? So that's if they want to get, obviously they're not going to get an exact age, like this was put down in 10,000 years ago on a Tuesday. They can't do that. But they could still do estimating how long ago. All right, another thing is most of the time evolution is a slow and steady pace, okay? Which Darwin called gradualism, which means gradual change over time. And the fossil record, that does not always support gradualism. There's a lack of what are called transitional specimens, meaning like here it is in one year and then here it is in another year, but like what was in between. Okay, so it's like the missing link idea. So they think that there are some cases where a species evolved rapidly, possibly in response to some catastrophic event where potentially some of them were killed and they killed off like this part of the population that had this characteristic, but not the part of the population that had a different characteristic. Okay, and that is called punctuated equilibrium. Okay, so the idea that evolution is not always gradual, but changes can occur rapidly for short periods of time in response to some major event. So we had this event that was called the Cambrian Explosion. Cambrian is one of our time periods, but this is where a lot of the stuff that we have today came about, and the reason why it's called an explosion is because it happened in a really short period of time relative to some other things. Okay.
Relative to the existence of the entire planet.
Right, yeah, exactly. Okay, here's some elephants. Okay, we've got two elephants that exist today, Asian and African elephants. These are their ancestors. We've got your mammoth over here, mastodon over here, and then there's not a huge amount of stuff that's kind of in between in the fossil record. So the ancestor to the elephant looked like this, looked almost like an anteater or something like that. But and this guy, I guess, kind of looks like an elephant. But they're not exactly sure what happened in between here to get all these different elephants coming out of it.
So you can breed an African and Asian elephant.
I'm not sure that they've tried that. They don't actually come across each other. So the only way that would happen would be man intervening to try that. And I don't know if they have. I know if they did that, it would probably have to be an African elephant carrying an Asian elephant baby, because the African elephant baby is probably the same size as the Asian elephant mother. So that would be kind of painful, I would think.
Yeah.
So, okay, we'll stop here. We'll have to record more after lunch, but that's okay. We figured it out. All right, let's